A cryptic phone call leads to an alarming discovery.
As they pulled away each piece of the clothing, they were shocked to find that there was a person under there.
The suspected killer comes forward, but the case is far from over.
This wasn't a whodunit. It was a question of why she did it and whether or not it was justified.
She said she was trying to protect herself and her children from this madman.
He was 6'7" and 230 pounds. His body was a weapon.
But no one that knows him believes her claims. No one.
And as the investigation unfolds, the evidence suggests nothing is quite what it seems.
If he passed away in the morning and we didn't get a call till 11 o'clock at night, what was going on during all of those hours?
If she's lying about that, what else is she lying about?
On August 7th, 2012, police in Carlsbad, California receive an unusual call.
The on-duty watch commander for the Carlsbad Police Department received a call on a back line that's not recorded. That's very rare. And that has to have somebody who knows the number to that watch commander.
Despite the special circumstances, what the caller appears to be requesting is a simple welfare check for a resident named Jason Harper.
The person identified himself as the former district attorney, Paul Finks, who had now become a prominent defense attorney in San Diego County. The Carlsbad Police Department responded immediately, and they were there in the neighborhood within a few minutes.
The lights in the home are off, and no one answers the door.
They noticed that the doors were locked and there was no sign of forced entry.
The officers did check around the perimeter. They did find a door that was open, and they entered the home to do the check. It was very cluttered, but it appeared to be just a normal home with nothing out of the ordinary. Not find anybody on the first floor. They go to the second story and check all of the bedrooms, bathrooms, etc. As they entered that primary bedroom of the home, they were immediately confronted with many objects, almost to the point of a hoarder. Numerous items of clothing and bags on the floor. It was hard to navigate around.
It was just piled up on the floor like it was junk. And as they pulled away each piece of the clothing, they were shocked to find that there was a person under there.
He was noticeably deceased. He did not have a pulse.
We were able to, based on his height, his weight, and what he looked like, determine it was Mr. Harper. He was laying face down.
There was what appeared to be a bullet hole in Jason Harper's back on the side, and that blood had been coming out onto his shirt.
Officers secure the crime scene and homicide detectives arrive.
There was no weapons found near the body, but they went in the closet and they did find a loaded shotgun. But it was clear based on the entry wound that this was not a shotgun blast. Obviously, the fact that it was in a state of disarray and it looked like a hoarder's den made it particularly difficult for law enforcement to sort and go through the entirety of evidence.
As we looked through the bedroom, we found multiple bottles of prescription drugs. Many of them were empty and in bags. Most of them were prescribed to Julie Harper.
Based on the name, investigators assume Julie Harper is Jason's wife.
The police officers looked at the family pictures all over the house, and they were able to see the identity of the family that was living there. We learned that they had 3 children. The officers wondered where the other members of the family were. Where are the children, and where is the wife?
Not knowing what happened or transpired, our biggest concern were the safety of the children and Julie. And we were trying to find out ways to figure out where they were. The best way for us to do that is to interview family members and friends that knew Jason, to get an understanding of who the person was, to help us tell the story of what occurred.
Jason Harper was born October 30th, 1972, and grew up in the greater Los Angeles area.
Jason was soft-spoken, just an easy person to be around. I called Jason the Gentle Giant, is what my nickname was for him back then. You couldn't miss him just because of his stature and his height. His demeanor was so calm. He could be very intimidating because he was tall, but just a sweet, sweet, sweet person.
Jason went to the University of California, Los Angeles, UCLA. He was a proud Bruin. It's my understanding that he was actually a two-time national champion volleyball player.
Jason remained single throughout college and for many years after. But in his late 20s, he met a striking young woman at a party named Julie Syack.
Jason Harper was a new teacher living in LA when he met Julie. They came from very different backgrounds and different neighborhoods.
I know she came from money. Her father is a successful businessman. Julie, I believe, studied at Harvard at some point. I think she also went to the University of Southern California, USC.
They were immediately smitten with each other, and Jason proposed around 6 months after they met.
Julie and Jason got married, they moved to Carlsbad, and they ended up having 3 children together in this neighborhood.
Julie really thrived in being a stay-at-home mom and made her happy.
My fondest memory of Julie is just hanging out and doing wines with the moms at someone's house in the neighborhood. Just having the camaraderie of women, really, and just laughing and cracking jokes and enjoying some vino and doing our thing. Also, Jason was a really good neighbor. There was an instance when our family was out of town and we got a text that our sprinkler had blown, and Jason, he immediately just took care of that. No second thoughts about that. He was a well-liked teacher at Carlsbad High. He was a high school volleyball coach, and he was a math teacher there as well. He never yelled. He never put them down. He was just soft-spoken. He was even-keeled. Jason was just an easy person to be around. Julie and Jason seemed like a really nice couple. They had these lovely kids. They had the supportive families.
It is the American dream. I know that's cliche, but they had what most people want. They fit right in. They belonged where they were.
Now, the Harpers' idyllic home life has been shattered by a horrifying discovery. Jason has been found murdered, and his wife and children appear to be missing.
The police need to figure out what happened, where's Julie, where are the children, and why is Jason Harper dead?
There are a number of possibilities. This could have been a burglary, however, there was no sign of forced entry, and the unusual manner in which the body had been buried under all this clothing didn't seem like your typical burglary.
The first thing I thought was there was some form of domestic violence that occurred, potentially a kidnapping, but not having the evidence to know which one it was, we were really focused on trying to find the kids and Julie.
Investigators begin their search by speaking with the attorney who requested the welfare check.
He said that he was representing Miss Julie Harper.
Mr. Finks was very cryptic as to the details and didn't want to give away too much information. He just informed us that she would be turning herself in.
So you're obtaining a well-known defense attorney and negotiating when you are going to go in to turn yourself into the police. It was something that made us definitely on high alert.
This wasn't a whodunit. It was a question of why she did it and whether or not it was justified.
Coming up, Julie's attorney goes public.
The defense attorney was already out painting a picture of a woman who was abused.
But in search of the truth, detectives turn to their only witnesses.
You feel sad? Does anybody ever get hurt?
One time.
The kids hear yelling from the master bedroom, and then they hear a loud thud.
Hours after the August 2012 welfare check on Jason Harper that led police to discover him shot to death, his wife Julie is preparing to surrender herself to investigators.
Her lawyer, Mr. Finks, informed the police that Julie and the kids were safe and that they were at her father's house in Scripps Ranch.
The day after the shooting, at approximately 3 o'clock, she turned herself in to law enforcement at her father's house in Scripps Ranch. Julie came out of the home and voluntarily went with them.
Julie didn't make any statements to police. She invoked her rights under Miranda to remain silent.
After that, the police execute a search warrant of her father's house.
They didn't notice anything of importance or evidentiary value.
Neither Julie nor her attorney offer any details to explain the shooting. Instead, Julie's attorney speaks with the media soon after Julie's arrest.
She wants to be with her children.
The defense attorney was already out painting a picture of a woman who was abused and was the victim of domestic violence. And he was able to begin controlling the narrative in the news.
Based on the timing and circumstances, detectives aren't ready to accept Julie's version of what happened.
There was a big question in my mind of why did she not call 911? Why did she not try to provide life-saving efforts if this was self-defense?
When someone says, I have been a victim of abuse in any way, shape, or form, we should believe them. But in this case, we're talking about a murder. It needs to be proven.
To verify Julie's claims, authorities search for any record of prior domestic abuse.
We did find one call for service at the home about a dispute between the two.
That call was made 9 months before the shooting on November 4th, 2011. The caller was the Harper's eldest son.
The police arrived and they determined that this was just a verbal confrontation and nothing physical had happened, and so they left.
Despite the lack of a history of violence, investigators know it's still possible it had been occurring.
In domestic violence cases, it's very common that abuse occurred for a long period of time before something's ever said.
They turn their attention to the only other potential witnesses, the Harper's children.
The children are 8 years old and 6 years old. There was also a baby in the house. And the first step was to have the 8-year-old and the 6-year-old interviewed.
The police took the children to do a forensic interview. And a forensic interview is basically an opportunity for an experienced professional to interview the children by asking non-suggestive, non-leading questions. The children were asked about any violence between the father, Jason, and the mother, Julie.
How do you feel when they're yelling loud and
I feel sad.
You feel sad? Yeah. Does anybody ever get hurt?
One time that Thanksgiving, like Daddy got going. But that's the only time she did, is at Thanksgiving.
At Thanksgiving that happened? Daddy grabbed right here?
That was a long time ago.
Right
on
there.
the list.
After establishing a rapport with the children, the forensic investigator asks them to describe what happened earlier that day.
Yesterday morning? Yeah. Tell me about the last time you saw your dad.
Oh, he was looking for his computer.
Julie and Jason were arguing over a computer. Jason was going to leave the residence and get another computer when Julie told him that she had hidden it in the bedroom upstairs.
When your dad was looking for his computer, how did he seem to be? Did he seem...
He was pretty pissed.
Mom and Dad go upstairs, and then the kids hear the yelling from the master bedroom. And then all of a sudden, they hear a loud thud.
Both kids ran upstairs to the master bedroom to see what that sound was.
They tried to open the door. The door appeared to be blocked by something. Julie answered the door, and she basically said, "Your father just fell off a chair. He's fine. Go downstairs."
Eventually, their mom came out and said that Daddy was sleeping and that they needed to go.
The kids described going to a coffee shop.
The son said that they ended up at their grandfather's house.
Although the children didn't witness the shooting, their story provides detectives with a timeline of events.
They were watching a specific cartoon that they were able to describe. We were able to determine what time that cartoon was airing in our region, and we determined that between 8 and 9 a.m. is when Jason was killed.
The children said that they went to a coffee shop and they ended up finding a receipt in Julie's car for La Costa Coffee for $9.41.
If he passed away in the morning and we didn't get a call till 11 o'clock at night that night, what was going on during all of those hours?
We took all of this information as well as the coffee shop receipt, and we were able to go and retrace her day.
The barista said that Julie was acting relatively normal and didn't seem frazzled or concerned or worried about anything.
It almost seemed psychopathic that she was able to go about her day in such a nonchalant manner while planning her next steps. The real question I had is what took place during the actual shooting? What precipitated this shooting? Was there a conversation, or was this a planned first-degree murder? And we needed to do some real forensic work to get more information so we could figure out what to do next and figure out exactly how this happened.
California authorities have arrested Julie Harper for the shooting death of her husband, Jason Harper. And investigators are skeptical of Julie's claims of self-defense.
When they first processed Julie, I remember looking through all those photographs, and there isn't a single speck of a bruise or a scratch or any sort of mark to indicate that Julie had just recently been in some sort of a physical confrontation at all.
Detectives hope an autopsy will provide more definitive answers.
There was a .38 caliber bullet that was recovered from Jason's body.
What we wanted to determine was the bullet entrance and its trajectory to help us determine what Jason's movement was at the time of the incident. Was he going towards her? Was he going away from her?
Generally, you would see evidence of stippling or soot if he was within 3 feet, and there was no evidence of that. Jason was shot in the left rib cage, kind of more towards the back of the rib cage, and the bullet traveled at an upward trajectory from the left rib cage and rested right here in the right pectoral, and it ended up piercing his heart. To me, what that entry wound indicated was that Jason was actually probably turning his body away from Julie at the moment that she pulled the trigger.
The day after the shooting, investigators still aren't convinced by Julie's version of events, so they turn to the Harpers' closest friends and family.
I wanted to know whether there was anything to corroborate her claim, whether witnesses had seen her being abused. After a thorough investigation, we weren't able to find a single friend or family member who was able to give any indication of past abuse.
Neighbors say it was Julie's behavior, not Jason's, that concerned them.
There was a lot of speculation because her demeanor, her persona, her personality has started to change in different ways.
After the second child was born, there was a shift in Julie's warm, attentive nature as a mother.
According to the neighbors, Julie's decline worsened after the arrival of the Harpers' third child.
Police are talking to a lot of people that know Julie Harper personally. And what many of them said collectively is, I don't know who this person is anymore. She used to be present, and now we don't see her. There was concern about her well-being.
There was some suspicion that she was going through postpartum depression, and that certainly increased the deterioration that she was going through.
Your house can't be 100% clean all the time, especially with little kids, but Julie's house was normally more well-appointed, and it was kind of a disaster over there.
When they offered Julie support, she explained she'd been suffering from various medical issues.
Julie was suffering from rheumatoid arthritis, which is very debilitating and painful. She was prescribed by a legitimate physician medicine to manage that pain.
She was seeking doctors that would prescribe her opioids and narcotics to help remedy that problem.
It appeared that she had been abusing these medications because she was taking a whole lot of pills.
Police were stunned by the amount of prescription drugs that were in that home. 52 bottles is a lot. And when you look and see when these prescriptions were written, within a year, there were thousands upon thousands of pills that were taken.
Between September 2011 and August 2012, Julie's drug dependence deepened and began to take a toll on her marriage.
Some of the themes that we were getting from the friends and family is that it was clear that this relationship was kind of at the end of its rope. And my theory is that I think he said, I want to get a divorce. We should get a divorce. I think that really upset her because she was trying to save the marriage.
When investigators checked court records, they learned the Harpers were in the process of getting a divorce. But Jason wasn't the one who initiated it.
We learned that Julie had filed for divorce from Jason 5 days prior to the shooting. She listed that there had been verbal abuse.
We think she wanted to be the first to kind of set the tone about what was going on in the relationship. I do think she wanted to have custody of the kids, and so that's why she initiated the divorce herself. She's a clever, savvy person, and she's always thinking about the next step.
Coming up, a second search warrant uncovers a damning piece of evidence.
This appeared to me to be a getaway bag.
And Julie finally breaks her silence.
He was coming towards me with his arms raised, and he said, I'm gonna kill you.
Investigators have spent just over a week examining Julie and Jason Harper's personal lives. And while evidence of domestic violence is thin, they have found a motive for murder.
The divorce filing, it really just set the stage for her state of mind on the morning of the shooting.
She files for divorce and cites abuse. And she cites, I don't feel safe. He's abusing me. I'm afraid. Those are things she wanted to make sure were on record before she did this.
And when detectives speak with Jason's mother, they discover Julie's escape plan didn't end with a divorce.
Jason's mother, Lina, saw Jason the night before, and they conversed about Jason seeing what he believed was fraud on his credit cards. Julie wrote 2 $4,500 checks against Jason's credit cards and cashed those.
Bank records confirm Julie cashed the checks 1 week before the shooting.
Julie was able to withdraw the cash by forging Jason's signature. We were able to get bank video of her going into the bank, and the signature didn't match Jason's signature. This was a possible sign that she had been planning the killing. We believed it was related to her premeditation and deliberation. We also wondered whether he had confronted her about the divorce filing and the money that was stolen on the morning of the shooting.
As a theory of murder takes shape, investigators want more evidence to ensure a conviction.
We felt like we missed something in her dad's home, and we wanted to have an opportunity to search it again to gather more evidence.
Police did a search warrant on August 16th, about 9 days after the shooting.
I would say a dozen detectives and myself went out to really thoroughly search the residence.
We went to the garage area that has been searched before, and we went into an attic space.
While I was photographing the attic, I noticed that there was right as you get to the top, there was a blue JanSport backpack. I went back down the stairs and I was like, hey, detectives, make sure that you look at that backpack up there because it seems out of place.
It appeared that it had been hidden there, and it was hidden for a reason. So the police opened it up.
Inside that backpack was Jason's cell phone, Julie's cell phone, jewelry, Jason's last will and testament, some passports, and interestingly enough, a naked photo of Jason. He was laying on what appeared to be like a hotel bed in the nude.
That in itself is bizarre and disturbing. I don't know why she would need that.
There was also a .32 caliber pistol, and that belonged to Julie, that was registered in her name.
The caliber is not a match for the weapon that killed Jason, but to detectives, the contents of the backpack are telling.
This appeared to me to be a getaway bag. It's something that a killer would use in order to flee the jurisdiction.
I think the purpose of having the passports is for her and the oldest 2 kids to get out of the country. I think the jewelry is pricey, so she need to sell it. But the last will and testament kind of stumps me, because if you're found guilty, the money you're going to get is not going to be from his last will and testament.
The backpack was important. I think it kind of telltale sign. This was pre-planned. She knew. And then she did a really good job of retaining her attorney and making it difficult for us.
I would say the level of planning that she was able to go through after the fact and the steps that she took to cover it up showed me that she wasn't really abused. And as long as a person thought about their actions and planned to take the actions before the killing, that constitutes first-degree murder. We were ready to prove to a jury that this woman intentionally killed her husband.
In September 2014, 2 years after Jason Harper was shot to death, his wife Julie Harper stands trial for premeditated murder. As expected, Julie claims self-defense. But her attorney surprises everyone by putting Julie on the stand.
Most defendants choose not to take the witness stand, but this was not your typical defendant. She was extremely smart, and she was ready to tell her story. Julie claimed that Jason was loud, he was verbally abusive, and that she was scared of him.
She said she was trying to protect herself and her children from this madman.
As evidence, Julie provides video recordings of Jason's behavior.
You, bitch! Carpool bitch. Figure it out. Can't help it if you're too dumb to do it. Too lazy.
Seems like the B-I-T-C-H is the only word that you can use.
That is darn right. That's what you are.
He was 6'7" and 230 pounds and very athletic and very strong. His body was a weapon.
It can paint the picture that he could be this kind of guy that could become unhinged.
Once again, bull, I'm not paying for anything.
I'm paying for the vacation.
That's bull, I am. That isn't true.
When we saw these videos in court, I knew that they didn't make Jason look good because he was being angry and he was yelling at Julie. But just because someone's angry and yelling at their spouse, there's a huge step from that to physically abusing them.
And Julie swears under oath that Jason didn't stop with verbal abuse.
She claimed that she was repeatedly raped by him every single day.
I said, stop, stop. What are you doing? Stop.
The defense enters Julie's personal journal as further evidence.
The journal apparently was the evidence that would, according to Julie, corroborate her testimony that she was being raped by Jason. In her journal, she would write sex next to the date that this happened, and she said that the word sex was code for rape.
But aside from Julie's private journal, the defense cannot present any evidence to corroborate her claims.
It's hard to refute if he's not here. But no one that knows Jason believes her claims. No one.
Nobody had any indication that she was going to claim this until we went to trial. There was no physical evidence or videos or audio that would tend to show that Jason Harper had raped his wife.
Instead, the defense relies on Julie's emotional recounting of the events that unfolded on August 7th, 2012.
What Julie said was they were arguing with one another. He got this crazy look in his eye.
She said he ran up to her screaming and began taking off her clothes. She believed she was going to be raped again.
He was coming towards me with his arms raised, and he said, "I'm gonna kill you, you."
That was the first time we had ever heard Julie Harper say anything about Jason Harper threatening to kill her.
Knowing what I know of Jason and the gentle giant that he was, I don't believe he was ever like that.
I grabbed my gun from under my pillow. I turned around. I told him, stop.
Did he stop?
No, I said, stay back. Felt my hand jerk and heard the loud noise. And he was still like coming forward at me. And then all of a sudden, he froze completely.
And then he fell with a thud on the ground.
She claims she could tell within seconds that he was gone.
The biggest surprise during her testimony was what she had done with the gun.
She claims that she buried it in somebody's yard or something like that to preserve it for evidence, but it's our belief that she disposed of it because it showed her guilt.
To prosecutors, the story is an obvious fabrication.
As good as she was at testifying, I knew that her story was simply contradicted by the physical forensic evidence from the autopsy.
What she basically said was that he was approaching her and he did not turn away, and that at the moment that she pulled the trigger, he was standing directly in front of her. And so the physical evidence directly disputed what she said actually happened.
The medical examiner determined there was a single gunshot wound to Jason Harper's back on the side near his ribcage. The bullet entered from behind and traveled to the front.
After closing arguments, the jury retires to deliberate.
The jury, after hearing the evidence, determined that we did not prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt as it relates to first-degree murder, and elected to acquit Julie. The jury was hung 9-3 for not guilty on second-degree murder, and so the court declared a mistrial.
I was shocked and disappointed at the outcome, and the prospect of having to do this trial all over again was a daunting one.
A trial date is set for the following year, and Julie is released on bond.
Yeah, for the first trial, she just wanted to come back in like life is normal. So she was going to concerts when she was out living in the house that she murdered her husband in, having a good time.
The kids were, I believe, under the care and custody of Jason's parents.
As we approached that second trial date, Julie informed the judge that she needed to delay the trial again. We learned that Julie had intentionally become pregnant through an artificial insemination.
I absolutely think it was a tactic to try to be found not guilty by either being pregnant during trial and or having a baby right before going to trial.
A year after her first trial for the suspected murder of her husband, Jason Harper, ended with a hung jury, Julie Harper's second trial begins in September 2015, following an unexpected pregnancy delay. Whether the recent birth of her fourth child will result in sympathy from the jury remains to be seen.
Once again, Julie took the witness stand and she stuck to her story. It was a story about being a battered woman who was physically, verbally, and sexually abused.
Now that they are familiar with her defense strategy, prosecutors have a new approach.
What we were going to do is we were going to ask her about all the times that she's lied about this case. And there was literally hundreds of questions.
They carefully dissect each piece of evidence, pointing out inconsistencies. They begin with the videos the defense used to establish Jason's abuse.
You, bitch!
It was clear that obviously Jason was frustrated, but what was also clear to me is that Jason wasn't doing anything physically violent. This was strictly a verbal argument.
And then when you looked at her journal, things just didn't add up. She says that this man had raped her over and over and over again. Spousal rape, 30 plus times is what she's accusing this man of.
But she also was writing in her journal at the same time that she says she's being raped, that she wants more sex with him. She was actually frustrated with his sexual prowess and wanted it to last longer.
That doesn't compute with someone who is violating you in one of the worst ways possible, continuously.
Jason's search history from the morning he was shot also contradicts Julie's claims.
Julie had said that basically that from around 8:30 to approximately 9 a.m., Jason was trying to rape her, essentially. And what we found was that he was actually on his own computer, looking up resources to help him with his soon-to-be pending divorce. He could not have been simultaneously browsing and searching the internet at 8:36 in the morning and raping Julie Harper. If she's lying about that, what else is she lying about?
The prosecution argues that Julie's desperation didn't stem from any alleged abuse, but her own dissatisfaction with her life.
Her relationship was crumbling, mostly because of her own actions.
She just snapped, completely just snapped.
This time, the jury is less sympathetic to Julie's claims.
Julie was ultimately convicted of second-degree murder and using a firearm in the commission of that murder.
She is sentenced to 40 years to life. 15 was for the murder, and 25 was for the gun charge.
I mean, normal people don't go around killing their husbands or spouses and go have coffee or whatever. I do believe that Julie got exactly what she deserved. That's a long time. That's a long time.
I think one of the worst parts about this, other than Jason losing his life, is that Julie took real stories from real people that sometimes don't make it out alive. And she took these stories, she concocted this plan for her own benefit, and didn't think about how anybody else would feel about it other than herself.
Julie Harper ruined Jason's life. She shot and killed him. And then she tried to destroy his legacy by dragging his name through the mud.
It was all very shocking and sad. I think Jason's death could have been easily prevented. I think something within that combination of whatever medications she was taking or misusing and whatever was going on in her head caused her to snap. The biggest tragedy is the children. It's hard enough for a child to lose any parent, much less two.
They respect Jason, and I remember Jason. She killed a great, great man.
Jason was such a good person. He was such a value, such an asset, and just his loss was immense, and it was felt, and it's still felt.
New York, January 2001. The kind of cold that doesn't just bite, it lingers. It clings to concrete, crawls through window frames, settles into silence. The city moves slower in this kind of weather. People keep their heads down. Doors stay shut. And sometimes what happens behind those doors stays buried. Until one doesn't. It starts with something ordinary. Too ordinary to matter. Newspapers. Stacked. Uncollected. Day after day, the pile grows outside apartment 4C. At first, no one notices. In New York, people mind their business. But by the fifth day, it becomes harder to ignore. The hallway feels off. Too quiet. Too still. At 8:42 a.m., a call is made. Not panic. Not yet. Just concern. By 9:15 a.m., the superintendent is standing outside the door, keys in hand. He knocks once. Twice. No answer. He unlocks it slowly, like he already knows something isn't right. The moment the door opens, the air changes. Cold. Not just winter cold. Something deeper. Something that feels paused. The apartment is untouched. Almost staged. A coffee mug sits on the table, half full, a thin film forming on the surface. A coat draped over a chair. Television remote lying on the floor, just out of reach, like it slipped from someone's hand mid-motion. No sign of forced entry. No chaos. No struggle. And then the bedroom. That's where everything stops making sense. She's on the floor beside the bed. Not sprawled. Not twisted. Just there. As if she lay down for a moment and never got back up. Emily Carter, 32. Healthy. Successful. The kind of life that moves fast and ends predictably. Except this one didn't. Her eyes are open. Wide. Locked on something that isn't there anymore. Detectives will later say that's the detail that stayed with them. Not the body. Not the silence. The eyes. Because they don't look empty. They look interrupted. Like whatever she saw in her final seconds didn't belong in this world. There are no visible injuries, no bruising, no blood, no sign of violence. The scene feels wrong in a way that's hard to articulate. Too clean, too quiet, too controlled. The coroner's report only deepens it. Cause of death: undetermined. No trauma, no toxins, no cardiac event, no neurological explanation. Nothing. A dead woman with no reason to be dead. By noon, the building is crawling with investigators. Questions ripple through the halls. Neighbors gather in doorways, whispering, speculating, trying to piece together something that refuses to be pieced together. Most of them say the same thing. She was normal. She kept to herself. Nothing unusual. But then one voice breaks pattern. Apartment 3B. A woman in her late 50s, hesitant at first, then certain. She heard something the night before. Not a scream. Not a struggle. Just a sound. A dull, sudden thud. Like something hitting the floor. Then silence. No footsteps. No voices. No movement. Just nothing. Detectives lock onto the timeline. Emily was last seen alive at 9:12 p.m. A doorman across the street remembers her clearly. She was standing under a streetlight, phone pressed to her ear, laughing. Relaxed. Unafraid. Alive. By 10 p.m., she was dead. Somewhere in that narrow window, less than an hour, something entered that apartment. Or was already inside. Her phone becomes the next focus. Call logs. Messages. Every digital trace. At 9:37 p.m., a call comes in. Unknown number. Duration: 42 seconds. No outgoing calls after that. No texts. No activity. Just silence. The number is traced. It leads nowhere. A dead end. Unregistered. Disposable. In 2001, that's not unusual. But in this context, it feels deliberate. Like a voice reaching into her life for less than a minute and then disappearing forever. Detectives go back to the apartment. Again. And again. And again. Because something doesn't sit right. That's when they notice it. The window. In the bedroom. Open. Not wide. Not obvious. Just a narrow gap. 2, maybe 3 inches. In January. In New York. It shouldn't be open. It doesn't make sense. They examine the frame. No damage. No tampering. No prints. So why open it? Was it already like that? Did she open it? Did someone else? Theories start forming. Then collapsing. If someone came through that window, there would be signs. There aren't. If someone left through it, the same problem. No evidence. Which leaves one possibility detectives hate more than any other. Whoever was in that room didn't need to break in. Emily knew them. Or thought she did. But every name in her life gets checked. Friends. Coworkers. Family. Acquaintances. Every single one has an alibi. Solid. Verifiable. Untouchable. The case begins to stall. Days stretch into weeks. Weeks into months. The media starts circling. Cold case. One headline reads, long before it officially becomes one. The phrase sticks. Because the investigation isn't just slowing, it's freezing. No forced entry. No cause of death. No suspect. No motive. Just a moment in time that refuses to explain itself. And then, just when it feels like it's slipping away completely, something surfaces. 6 months later. Too late to be fresh. Too late to be reliable. A maintenance worker steps forward. Reluctant. Uneasy. He says he remembers something from that night. Something he didn't think mattered. Around 9:45 p.m., minutes after that mysterious call, he was in the hallway, fixing a flickering light. That's when he saw someone. Standing near Emily's door. Not knocking. Not leaving. Just standing there. Still. Watching. The description is vague. Male maybe. Tall possibly. Dark clothing. Face unclear. Like a shadow that refuses to hold shape. Detectives push him. Hard. They need more. But the details don't sharpen. They blur. And that's worse. Because now there's a presence. A figure inserted perfectly into the timeline, at exactly the right moment. But still, no identity, no connection, no trace. The case tightens for a moment, then slips again, like it doesn't want to be solved. Years pass. The file grows heavier, thicker, colder. New detectives take over. Fresh eyes. Same dead ends. Technology improves. Databases expand. Old evidence gets re-examined. Nothing changes. The apartment is eventually rented out again. New tenants move in. They don't know the story at first, but some of them feel it, that something is off. Not dramatic, not obvious, just subtle. A quiet that feels too deep. A stillness that lingers a little too long. Like the room remembers something it can't explain. And neither can anyone else. Because the questions never left. What happened between 9:12 and 10 p.m.? Who called her at 9:37? Who stood outside her door at 9:45? And most of all, what did Emily Carter see in the final seconds of her life? Because her eyes, they weren't empty. They were fixed, locked onto something. Something that shouldn't have been there. Something that vanished without a trace. And for years, that's where it stayed. A perfect dead end. A cold case. Frozen in time. Until one detail, one fragment overlooked, dismissed, buried in evidence, resurfaced. And when it did, it didn't just reopen the case. It shattered it. The detail had been there from the beginning. Logged, cataloged, filed away with everything else that didn't make sense. And like everything else in the Carter case, it had been ignored. Until it wasn't. 17 years later, the box is opened again. Not dramatically. Not with urgency. Just routine. A backlog review. Cold cases pulled from storage, re-examined under new systems, new databases, new eyes that weren't there the first time. Detective Aaron Malloy is the one who draws it. Not by choice. By rotation. He's seen cases like this before, files that look dense but feel hollow. Pages and pages of reports that lead nowhere. Evidence bags sealed with nothing inside but frustration. Stories that start loud and end in silence. At first glance, this one feels the same. Female, early 30s. No cause of death. No suspect. Dead in her own apartment. Case closed without being solved. He flips through the photographs. The living room. Still. Ordinary. The kitchen. Clean. Undisturbed. The bedroom. He pauses. There's something about it. Not obvious. Not immediate. Just a flicker of something that doesn't line up. He leans closer. The window. Open. Just slightly. 2 inches. Maybe less. He reads the original report. Then reads it again. Window observed partially open. No signs of forced entry. No foreign prints recovered. That's it. One line. 17 years reduced to one line. Malloy doesn't like that. Because in his experience, the details that get minimized are usually the ones that matter most. He requests the physical evidence. Everything that still exists. Which, after nearly 2 decades, isn't much. Some photographs. A few sealed bags. And the original window frame swabs. Collected, labeled, and forgotten. Back in 2001, DNA testing wasn't what it is now. Samples were taken, processed with limited methods, and anything inconclusive was filed away. Now things are different. He sends the swabs in. No expectations. Just process. Days pass. Then weeks. He moves on to other cases. Until a call comes in. Short. Direct. Unexpected. There's something here. The lab tech doesn't sound excited. That's what makes it hit harder. Because this isn't supposed to happen. 17-year-old evidence isn't supposed to come back alive. But this one does. Partial DNA. Not enough for a full profile. But enough. Enough to say one thing clearly. It doesn't belong to Emily Carter. Malloy feels the shift immediately. Subtle, but real. For the first time, the case breathes. He pushes further. The sample is run through updated databases. Nothing. No matches. But that doesn't kill it. Not anymore. Because now there's another option. Genealogical tracing. It's new, controversial, unpredictable. But when it works, it doesn't just find people. It finds families. Weeks turn into months again. But this time, the waiting feels different. Not empty. Tense. Like something is forming just out of view. Then the second call comes in. This one isn't quiet. We have a lead. Not a name. Not yet. But a direction. The DNA connects to a distant relative. Third cousin. Somewhere in New Jersey. From there, the tree begins to grow. Branches spreading. Names appearing. Histories unfolding. Malloy watches it build in real time. Decades collapsing into connections. Until one branch stands out. A name that shouldn't matter, but does. Daniel Hargrove. No record. No violent history. No reason to be on anyone's radar. But he lived in New York in 2001. Closer than close. Same neighborhood. 3 blocks from Emily Carter's apartment. Malloy pulls everything he can. Old addresses. Employment records. Phone logs. It's thin. Too thin. But then, one detail locks in. A number. An old phone number tied to Hargrove. Inactive now. Dead. But back in 2001, it existed. Malloy cross-references it. Heart steady. Expecting nothing. The result hits like a crack through glass. 9:37 p.m. Incoming call. Emily Carter. 42 seconds. The ghost in the timeline now has a name. The room feels smaller. Tighter. Because suddenly, the impossible isn't impossible anymore. Someone called her. Someone stood outside her door. Someone left DNA on that window. And now, that someone exists. Malloy doesn't wait. He tracks Hargrove forward through time. The man didn't disappear. He didn't run. He stayed. Moved once. Then again. Settled into a quiet life upstate. No arrests. No flags. No reason for anyone to ever look twice. Until now. Surveillance begins. Careful. Controlled. They watch him from a distance. Days. Then weeks. He doesn't look like anything. That's the problem. No aggression. No signs of instability. No obvious guilt. Just a man living a normal life. Working. Eating. Sleeping. Existing. But Malloy has seen this before. The quiet ones. The ones who slip through because they don't fit the pattern. Because they don't leave messes. Because they don't get caught. A warrant is prepared. Not for arrest. Not yet. Just to collect a sample. DNA. To confirm what they already feel closing in. The day it happens, Hargrove doesn't resist. Doesn't question. Doesn't even seem surprised. That's what unsettles Malloy the most. Because most people, they react. They push back. They ask why. Hargrove doesn't. He just complies. Like he's been expecting this moment for longer than anyone realizes. The sample is processed fast. Faster than anything in 2001 ever could have been. Malloy waits. Not pacing. Not restless. Just still. Because he already knows. When the result comes in, it's definitive. A match. Not partial. Not probable. Certain. The DNA from the window belongs to Daniel Hargrove. 17 years collapse into a single point. The unknown caller. The figure in the hallway. The presence in the apartment. All of it now has a face. An arrest warrant is issued. This time, there's no hesitation. No delay. They move in early. 6:12 a.m. Same kind of cold as that morning in 2001. Doors breached. Commands shouted. Hargrove is taken into custody without resistance. Again. No panic. No confusion. Just silence. Like he's stepping into something that was always going to happen. At the station, the questions begin. Standard procedure. Name. Background. Timeline. He answers everything. Calm. Measured. Controlled. Until they bring up her name. Emily Carter. That's when it shifts. Not dramatically. Not visibly. Just a flicker. The smallest crack in an otherwise perfect surface. Malloy leans in. Because this is the moment. 17 years. One question. What happened in that apartment? Hargrove doesn't answer right away. He looks down, then back up. And for the first time, there's something in his eyes. Not fear. Not guilt. Something else. Something harder to define. When he finally speaks, his voice is steady. Flat. I didn't kill her. The room stills. Because that's not denial. Not really. It's something else. Something more precise. Malloy doesn't move. Doesn't react. He's heard variations of this before. But this one feels different. Then why were you there? A pause. Longer this time. Hargrove exhales slowly, like he's deciding how much of the truth exists. I want to talk to her. Malloy waits. Because that's not enough. Not even close. About what? Hargrove's gaze drifts. Not to the walls. Not to the table. Somewhere else. Somewhere internal. And when he speaks again, the case fractures all over again. She called me first. Malloy's expression doesn't change. But inside, everything shifts. Because that wasn't in the file. Not anywhere. No outgoing call. No record. Nothing. And yet, here it is. A new piece. 17 years late. Dropping into a timeline that was already fragile. Malloy leans forward slightly. Because now, they're not just reopening the case. They're rewriting it. And whatever happened in that apartment is no longer what anyone thought it was. The room doesn't move. No one interrupts. Because what Daniel Hargrove just said doesn't fit. It doesn't bend. It breaks. She called me first. The words hang there, suspended, like everything else in this case that refuses to land where it should. Detective Malloy doesn't respond immediately. He's learned not to. Silence has weight in interrogation rooms. Sometimes more than questions ever could. Hargrove doesn't fill it. He just sits there. Calm. Too calm. Malloy studies him. The posture. The breathing. The eyes. Looking for something, anything, that cracks under pressure. Nothing does. You're saying Emily Carter called you, Malloy finally says, voice even controlled. Before you went to her apartment. Hargrove nods once. Slow. Yes. Malloy leans back slightly, letting the statement settle into the timeline he's memorized down to the minute. Because there's a problem. There is no record of that call. Not on her phone. Not on any log. Nothing. Then explain something to me, Malloy continues. Why isn't there a record of it? A pause. Not hesitation. Calculation. Hargrove exhales lightly, as if the answer is obvious. Because she didn't use her phone. That lands harder than it should. Malloy doesn't blink. But internally something shifts again. Then what did she use? Another pause. Shorter this time. Hargrove's gaze drifts for just a second, like he's replaying something he hasn't revisited in years. My number was written down, he says. She called from somewhere else. Malloy feels the thread tighten. Because now they're not just dealing with missing evidence. They're dealing with something that may never have been recorded at all. Where did you meet her? Malloy asks. Hargrove doesn't answer right away. He looks down at his hands. Then back up. At a bar, he says. A few weeks before. Malloy gestures slightly. Which bar? Hargrove gives the name. A small place. Gone now. Closed years ago. Of course it is. Malloy writes it down anyway. Because every detail matters now. Even the ones that no longer exist. You talked. You exchanged numbers, Malloy continues. And then what? Nothing, Hargrove says. Not at first. Malloy narrows his focus. Until that night. A nod. Yes. Tell me about the call. This time, the pause stretches longer. Not because Hargrove doesn't want to answer, but because he's choosing how much to give. She sounded different, he says finally. How? Hargrove's jaw tightens slightly. Not like before. Malloy leans in just enough. Different how? Another breath. Measured. Quieter. Slower. Like she was thinking about every word before she said it. Malloy says nothing. Just lets it unfold. She asked if I could come over. Hargrove continues. Said she needed to talk. About what? She didn't say. Malloy watches him carefully. Because this is where stories usually slip, where details get messy. But Hargrove stays steady. So you went, Malloy says. Yes. What time? After the call. Maybe 15 minutes later. Malloy calculates automatically. 9:37 p.m. That puts Hargrove at the apartment around 9:50. Right in the window. Right where everything collapses. You knocked? Malloy asks. A slight shake of the head. The door was unlocked. That detail lands like a quiet explosion. Because the original report said the door was locked when the superintendent opened it. Which means one of two things. Either Hargrove is lying, or someone locked that door after he left. Malloy doesn't react. Not outwardly. What happened when you went inside? Hargrove's expression doesn't change, but something behind it shifts, a shadow moving just beneath the surface. She was standing in the living room, he says. Alive. Yes. Alone. A pause. Longer this time. Hargrove nods. Yes. Malloy catches it. The hesitation. Small. But real. You're sure? He presses. Hargrove's eyes flicker. Just once. Yes. Malloy doesn't challenge it. Not yet. Then what? Hargrove leans back slightly in his chair. Like he's settling into a memory he hasn't fully processed. She didn't sit down, he says. Didn't offer me anything. Just stood there. Did she seem afraid? Another pause. Yes, he says quietly. That changes everything. Afraid of what? Hargrove doesn't answer immediately. Because now they're getting closer to something real. I don't know, he says finally. She wouldn't say. Malloy watches him carefully. Because this isn't just recollection anymore. This is something else. She just kept looking past me, Hargrove continues. Like she was expecting something. Or someone, Malloy adds. Hargrove doesn't respond. Which is its own kind of answer. Malloy lets the silence stretch again. Because whatever comes next matters. What did you talk about? He asks. Hargrove exhales slowly. She asked me if I believed in coincidences. Malloy's expression tightens almost imperceptibly. Coincidences. Yes. What did you say? I said yes. A beat. And she said? Hargrove's gaze drifts again. Further this time. Like he's stepping deeper into something he doesn't fully understand. She said some things aren't coincidences, he murmurs. Some things repeat. Malloy feels the tension shift in the room. Not toward resolution, but toward something stranger. Repeat, he asks. Hargrove nods. She said she'd seen me before. Malloy freezes on that. Before the bar? Yes. Where? She didn't know. That doesn't make sense. And that's the problem. None of this does. She said it felt like it had already happened. Hargrove continues. Like we'd already had the same conversation. Malloy leans back slightly. Because now, this isn't just a timeline. It's something fractured. Something looping. What happened next? He asks. Hargrove doesn't answer right away. His hands shift slightly on the table. The first real sign of discomfort. She started to panic, he says. How? Breathing faster. Looking around. Like something was wrong. Malloy's voice sharpens just a fraction. What was wrong? I don't know. Hargrove snaps suddenly. The first break. The first crack in control. I didn't know then, and I don't know now. The room stills again. Malloy doesn't push immediately. Because that reaction. That was real. She went into the bedroom. Hargrove continues, quieter now. I followed her. Malloy's focus tightens. Because now, they're at the center of it. The room where everything ended. What did you see? He asks. Hargrove swallows once. Subtle. But visible. The window, he says. Open. Yes. Malloy feels the pieces begin to circle each other again. She kept staring at it, Hargrove says. Like something had been there. Had been. A nod. Yes. Malloy leans forward slightly. Did you see anyone? Hargrove hesitates. And this time, it's not small. It's not subtle. It's real. No, he says finally. But it doesn't land clean. Malloy hears it, feels it, because that answer isn't complete. What happened next? Malloy presses. Hargrove's breathing changes, just enough to notice. She turned toward me, he says, like she was about to say something. And a long pause. Too long. Then she fell. The word hits hard. Simple. Flat. Final. Just like that. Malloy asks. Yes. No struggle? No warning. Hargrove shakes his head. Nothing. Malloy studies him. Because this is the moment. The one that has defined the case for 17 years. How did she fall, he asks. Hargrove's eyes flicker again. Like something hit her. The room goes still. Because that wasn't in any report. That wasn't in any theory. That's not possible, Malloy says quietly. Hargrove looks up. And for the first time, there's something unmistakable in his expression. Not fear. Not guilt. Certainty. I know what I saw, he says. Malloy holds his gaze. Because now, they're standing at the edge of something that doesn't follow rules. No cause of death. No visible trauma. A woman collapsing as if struck by something invisible. What did you do? Malloy asks. Hargrove exhales slowly. I panicked. Did you touch her? No. Did you call anyone? No. Why not? Hargrove's jaw tightens. Because I knew how it would look. That part makes sense. Too much sense. So you left, Malloy says. Yes. Through the door? A beat. Then, no. Malloy doesn't move. Doesn't blink. Through the window, Hargrove says quietly. And just like that, the last piece of the original scene snaps into place. The open window. The DNA. The impossible exit. 17 years of questions. Answered. And yet, nothing feels resolved. Because now there's a bigger one. If Hargrove didn't kill her, then what did? The answer should feel like closure. It doesn't. Because instead of resolving the case, Daniel Hargrove's confession fractures it into something worse. Something unstable. Something that refuses to stay inside the lines of logic. He didn't force entry. He didn't leave through the door. He didn't touch the body. And, according to him, he didn't kill her. But he was there. Inside the room. At the exact moment everything ended. Malloy replays it in his head. Over and over. Emily Carter, standing in her bedroom. Afraid. Distracted. Fixated on an open window that shouldn't be open. A man in the room with her. A conversation that makes no sense. And then, she falls. Like something hit her. But nothing did. No weapon. No impact. No trace. The kind of detail that kills cases. Or worse. Turns them into something no one wants to touch. Malloy doesn't buy it. He can't. Because every instinct built over years says the same thing. There is always a cause. Always a sequence. Always something real beneath the surface. So if Hargrove isn't lying, then something else is. The interrogation continues. Hours pass. Then more. The same questions, reshaped, reframed, repeated from different angles. Malloy doesn't push for a confession. He pushes for inconsistency. But Hargrove doesn't break. He doesn't contradict himself. If anything, he becomes more precise, more controlled, more certain. You're telling me she just dropped, Malloy says again late into the night. Yes. No sound. A thud. Malloy notes it. The neighbor heard the same thing. A dull impact. No scream. No struggle. It aligns. Too cleanly. What about her expression? Malloy asks. Hargrove's eyes shift slightly. That flicker again. Her eyes, he says quietly. They were wide, like she saw something. Malloy doesn't react. But inside, the detail locks into place. Because that's exactly how she was found. Eyes open. Fixed. frozen in that final moment. What did she see? Malloy presses. Hargrove shakes his head. I don't know. You were right there. I know. Then how do you not know? This time, the frustration shows. Subtle, but real. Because it wasn't me, Hargrove says. The room tightens again. Because now they're circling the same impossible center. If it wasn't him, then what? Malloy changes direction. Because sometimes the truth doesn't sit in the moment. Sometimes it hides in what came before. Tell me about the first time you met her, he says. Hargrove exhales. Long. Like he knows this matters more than anything else. It was nothing, he says. Just a bar. Conversation. Drinks. What did you talk about? Normal things. Work. Yes. Family? Yes. Anything unusual? A pause. Then, yes. Malloy leans forward. What? Hargrove hesitates. And this time it's different. This isn't calculation. This is reluctance. She asked me something strange, he says. What kind of strange? Hargrove looks down, then back up. Whether I ever felt like I'd lived the same moment twice. Malloy doesn't move. Because now, they're back in that space. That loop. That repetition. What did you say? Malloy asks. I told her no. And she? Hargrove's voice lowers slightly. She said she had. A silence follows. Heavy. Because that kind of statement, it doesn't belong in a normal conversation. Did she explain? Malloy asks. Hargrove nods slowly. She said sometimes she would be somewhere and suddenly feel like she already knew what was about to happen. Malloy's expression tightens. Like déjà vu. Yes, Hargrove says. But stronger. How? Hargrove exhales again. Like she could predict it. That lands differently. Because now, this isn't just a strange detail. It's a pattern. Malloy writes it down. Not because he believes it, but because it fits. In a way nothing else does. Did she ever mention being afraid? He asks. Yes. When? That night. Only that night? Hargrove hesitates. Then shakes his head. No. Malloy looks up. Explain. Hargrove's jaw tightens again. After we met at the bar, she called me once before. Malloy freezes. Because that wasn't in the timeline. When? A few days after. Why didn't you mention this before? You didn't ask. Malloy holds his gaze. Because that's technically true. But it doesn't make it less dangerous. What did she say in that call? Malloy asks. Hargrove's voice drops. She asked if I remembered what we talked about. And I said yes. What was her reaction? A pause. Longer this time. Relief, Hargrove says. Relief. Yes. Why? Hargrove shakes his head. I don't know. Malloy studies him. Because this changes everything again. Now, there's a second call. Unrecorded. Unlogged. Existing only in memory. Just like the first. Did she say anything else? Malloy asks. Hargrove nods slightly. She asked me if I ever felt like something was following me. Malloy doesn't respond. Doesn't interrupt. Because the tone has shifted. This isn't just recounting anymore. This is something deeper. Something closer to fear. What did you say? Malloy asks. I told her no. And she? Hargrove swallows. She said she did. The room feels colder. Because now, there's a thread connecting everything. Not cleanly. Not logically. But undeniably. She said it wasn't a person, Hargrove continues. Not exactly. Malloy leans in. Then what was it? Hargrove's voice barely rises above a whisper. She didn't know. A long silence follows. Because now, the case isn't just broken. It's bending into something else entirely. Malloy pushes forward anyway. Because that's what he does. What happened after that call? He asks. Nothing, Hargrove says. We didn't talk again until that night. Malloy nods slowly. Building it. Piece by piece. She calls you. Asks you to come over. You arrive. She's afraid. talking about things repeating, something following her. Then she goes into the bedroom and falls. Hargrove finishes. Malloy watches him carefully, because this is where the truth either collapses or reveals itself. Did you see anything in that room? He asks again. Hargrove doesn't answer immediately. His breathing shifts, just slightly. Enough. Answer the question, Malloy says. A long pause. Then, yes. The word is quiet, but it hits harder than anything else so far. Malloy doesn't move. What did you see? Hargrove's eyes lift, slowly, and for the first time since the interrogation began. There's something unmistakable in them. Not fear, not guilt. Something deeper. Something that doesn't belong in a police report. I don't know how to explain it, he says. Try. Another pause. Then, it wasn't solid. Malloy's expression doesn't change. But internally, everything sharpens. Not solid, he repeats. Hargrove shakes his head. No. What do you mean? Hargrove exhales slowly, like he's stepping into something he's avoided for years. Like a distortion, he says. In the air. The room goes still. Because that's not evidence. That's not testimony. That's something else. Where? Malloy asks. Near the window. Of course. Always the window. What did it look like? Hargrove closes his eyes briefly, then opens them again. Like something was there, but not fully. Malloy lets the silence stretch, because pushing too hard now could break it. Did it move? He asks. Hargrove nods. Yes. How? A pause. Then, toward her. The words land like a drop into deep water. No ripple, just depth. And then, Malloy asks. Hargrove's voice tightens. She collapsed. Malloy holds his gaze. Because now, they're beyond normal explanations. Beyond standard procedure. Beyond anything that fits cleanly into a case file. But one thing remains. One undeniable fact. Daniel Hargrove was in that room. He saw something. He left through the window. And Emily Carter died. 17 years later. They finally have a suspect. But instead of answers, they have something worse. A story that doesn't belong in reality. And a case that even now refuses to make sense. It should end here. A suspect identified. DNA confirmed. A timeline reconstructed. A presence inside the room. For most cases, that's enough. For this one, it's not even close. Because Daniel Hargrove's story doesn't close the gap. It widens it. Malloy sits with the files spread across his desk long after the interrogation ends. Photographs, reports, transcripts, every piece laid out like a puzzle that refuses to lock into place. There's a man in the room. There's a dead woman on the floor. There's DNA on the window. And yet, no cause of death. No physical interaction. No weapon. Nothing that explains how a healthy 32-year-old woman collapses and dies in seconds. Malloy doesn't believe in impossible cases. But this one is getting close. So, he does what experienced detectives do when the present won't cooperate. He goes backward. All the way back. To Emily Carter. Not the victim. The person. Because somewhere in her life, something started this. Her apartment is gone now. Renovated. Repainted. Re-rented. The space where she died no longer looks the same. But records remain. Work files. Emails. Personal notes. Archived data that survived the years. Malloy pulls everything. And begins digging. At first, it's exactly what they expected in 2001. Emails about campaigns. Deadlines. Office politics. Routine stress. Nothing alarming. Nothing dangerous. Nothing that suggests fear. Until he reaches the last month. That's when the tone shifts. Subtle at first. Then undeniable. Emails become shorter. More fragmented. Replies delayed. Meetings missed. Coworkers noted it at the time but dismissed it. Stress. Burnout. Nothing unusual. Except now. Looking back, it doesn't feel like stress. It feels like distraction. like her attention was somewhere else. Somewhere outside the normal rhythm of her life. Malloy focuses on one thread. A series of late-night emails she sent to herself. Not drafts. Not work notes. Something else. The subject lines are blank. The content. Short. Disjointed. Almost like reminders. Again tonight. Same time. Not a dream. Malloy reads them twice. Then a third time. Because this isn't work. This is something personal. Something she didn't share with anyone else. He scrolls further. More messages. Each one stranger than the last. He was there. Watching. Doesn't move right. Malloy feels the same shift he felt in the interrogation room. That subtle tightening. That sense that the case isn't just unsolved. It's misread. He cross-references the dates. The emails start appearing 3 weeks before her death. 3 weeks of something building. Escalating. Repeating. Just like she told Hargrove. Some things repeat. Malloy prints them out. Lays them beside the crime scene photos. Because now, they're part of the same story. Whether anyone wants them to be or not. He digs deeper. Phone records. Again. Looking for anything that connects to those nights. Anything unusual. Calls. Messages. Unknown numbers. There's nothing. But that doesn't mean nothing happened. It just means it wasn't recorded. Which, at this point, feels like a pattern. He tracks her movements. Credit card logs. Subway entries. Security timestamps from nearby buildings. Piecing together her last weeks. Day by day. Night by night. And something emerges. Not cleanly. Not clearly. But enough. She was changing her routine. Subtly. Leaving work earlier some days. Later on others. Stopping in places she didn't normally go. A bookstore. A small cafe. The same bar where she met Hargrove. Over and over. Like she was trying to anchor herself somewhere. Or avoid something else. Malloy pulls the records from that bar. What little remains. Receipts. Staff logs. Old employee contacts. Most of it is gone. But one name comes up. A bartender. Still alive. Still in the city. Malloy tracks him down. A small apartment. Upper West Side. The man is older now. Slower. But his memory. Sharp enough. At first, he doesn't remember her. Not specifically. Too many faces. Too many nights. But when Malloy shows him the photo, something clicks. Yeah, he says slowly. I remember her. Malloy leans in. Why? The bartender hesitates. Then, because she asked weird questions. There it is again. That word. Weird. Not dangerous. Not threatening. Just wrong. What kind of questions? Malloy asks. The man exhales. Stuff about time, he says. Patterns. Repetition. Malloy feels the thread tighten further. Did she come in alone? Mostly. Mostly. A pause. Then, sometimes she'd sit like she was waiting for someone. Malloy's focus sharpens. Did anyone join her? The bartender shakes his head. No. Did she talk to anyone? Another pause. Not really. Malloy studies him. Because something about that answer doesn't sit right. What aren't you saying? He asks quietly. The bartender shifts slightly. Uncomfortable. Then, she talked to people who weren't there. The room stills. Because now, they're crossing a line. From strange to something else. Malloy doesn't react outwardly. Explain. The bartender rubs his hands together slowly. Sometimes she'd be sitting alone, and you'd see her nodding, responding, like someone was across from her. Malloy's voice stays steady. But there wasn't. No. Did she seem aware of that? The bartender shakes his head. No. That's the thing. To her, someone was there. Malloy lets that settle. Because now, Emily Carter isn't just a victim. She's part of the mystery. What about the night she met Hargrove? Malloy asks. The bartender nods. I remember that one. Why? Because it was different. Malloy waits. She wasn't talking to nothing that night, the man says. She was talking to him. Hargrove. A real person. A real conversation. A real connection. Did anything stand out? Malloy asks. The bartender frowns slightly. Yeah. What? She kept looking over his shoulder. Malloy's chest tightened slightly. Like she saw something? The bartender nods. Exactly. Malloy leans back. Because now, everything is aligning. Not cleanly. Not logically. But undeniably. The emails. The calls that weren't recorded. The conversations that may or may not have happened. The fear. The repetition. The sense of being watched. And then, the final night. The window. The distortion. The collapse. Malloy leaves the apartment hours later. The city feels different. Or maybe he does. Because now, this isn't just a cold case. It's a pattern. Something that started before Hargrove ever entered the picture. Something that was already in motion. Already building. Already closing in. And whatever it was, Emily Carter saw it coming. The question is, why couldn't anyone else? And more importantly, if she wasn't imagining it, then what was actually there? Because 17 years later, the evidence is finally speaking. But instead of clarity, it's pointing towards something far more unsettling. Something that doesn't leave fingerprints, doesn't show up on cameras, doesn't exist in records, but somehow still kills. And if that's true, then this case was never just about a man in a room. It was about something else entirely. Something that may not have left when she died. By now, the case should be narrowing. Instead, it's expanding. Not outward into new suspects, new motives, new evidence in the traditional sense, but inward, into something less tangible, less defined, something that doesn't behave like a crime, but still ends in death. Malloy doesn't like that, because cases are supposed to follow structure. Cause leads to action. Action leads to consequence. But here, cause is missing, and consequence is all that remains. So, he pushes harder. Not into theory. Into verification. Because if something doesn't make sense, you test it until it breaks. Or proves itself. The first step is simple. Rebuild the final night. Minute by minute. Second by second. Not just through statements, but through everything that can still be measured. Phone activity. Environmental conditions. Building structure. Even the weather. January 2001. Temperature below freezing. Wind minimal. No storm activity. Nothing that explains an open window. Nothing that explains movement in the air. Nothing that explains anything. Malloy requests the original autopsy again. Not the summary. The full report. Every note. Every observation. Every overlooked detail. Because sometimes the truth isn't hidden. It's just ignored. The medical examiner at the time had been thorough. Frustrated, but thorough. No trauma. No internal bleeding. No stroke. No aneurysm. No sign of poison. Nothing in the blood. Nothing in the organs. But then, Malloy sees it. A line buried deep in the report. Almost dismissed. Minor irregularity observed in cardiac rhythm markers. Not sufficient to determine cause of death. Malloy reads it again. And again. Because that might be something. He brings it to a modern specialist. A cardiologist who deals with unexplained deaths. The kind that don't leave obvious signs. The doctor reviews the report. Silently. Carefully. Then leans back. What do you think? Malloy asks. The doctor exhales slowly. If this were today, he says, we might consider arrhythmic collapse. Malloy narrows his focus. Meaning, the heart stops. Suddenly. Without warning. No structural damage. No toxins. Nothing you can easily detect. Malloy nods slowly. Because that sounds close. Too close. But, the doctor adds. And there it is. That word again. But what? It's rare, he says. Extremely rare. And usually there are triggers. Malloy's voice tightens. What kind of triggers? The doctor hesitates. Then, stress. Shock. Intense neurological input. Malloy leans forward. Define that. The doctor chooses his words carefully. Something that overwhelms the system. Causes a sudden, extreme reaction. Malloy feels it connect. Not cleanly, but enough. What about external stimuli? He asks. Like what? Malloy doesn't answer directly. Something visual, he says. Unexpected. Disturbing. The doctor considers it. It's possible, he says. In theory. Malloy doesn't push further. Because that's all he needs. Not certainty. Possibility. Because now, there's a mechanism. A way a body could fail. Without physical cause. Without visible damage. Without leaving a trace. But that only raises a bigger question. What could trigger something like that? Malloy goes back to Hargrove. Not for answers. For consistency. You said she looked at something, he says during the next interrogation session. Yes. Something near the window. Yes. What exactly? Hargrove exhales. Same pattern. Same restraint. Like I told you, he says. A distortion. Malloy shakes his head slightly. That's not enough. It's all I have. Malloy studies him. Because now, they're not trying to prove Hargrove killed her. They're trying to understand what he saw. Or what he thinks he saw. Could it have been a reflection? Malloy asks. No. Light from outside? No. Movement from another building? Hargrove shakes his head each time. No. 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 Malloy leans in. Then what was it? Hargrove's voice drops again. I don't know. And that's the truth. Or, at least, it feels like it. Malloy changes approach. Because sometimes the answer isn't in what someone saw, but in how they reacted. You left through the window, he says. Yes. Why? A pause. Then, because I didn't want to walk back through that room. That lands harder than expected. Because fear, real fear, doesn't fake well. What were you afraid of? Malloy asks. Hargrove doesn't answer immediately. His hands shift slightly again. That same small sign of discomfort. Not what, he says quietly. Malloy waits. Then, what? Hargrove looks up. And this time, there's no hesitation. That it would still be there. The room goes still. Because that's not fear of being caught. That's something else entirely. Malloy lets the silence sit. Because pushing now would break it. Instead, he pivots. Back to Emily. Back to the beginning of whatever this was. He pulls more of her digital history. Not just emails. Search records. Archived browser data. Fragments recovered from old backups. Most of it is gone. But not all. And what remains is enough. Search queries. Late at night. Repeated. Variations of the same idea. Feeling watched when alone. Seeing same person in different places. Deja vu extreme meaning. Hallucinations or something else. Malloy reads them slowly. Because this isn't random. This is progression. A pattern of someone trying to understand something happening to them. Something escalating. Something they couldn't explain. And then, one final search. 2 days before her death. Can fear stop your heart instantly? Malloy leans back. Because now, everything is circling the same point. Fear. Repetition. Something seen. Something not understood. Something that builds. Until it breaks. He cross-references again. Looking for anyone else. Anyone connected. Anyone who reported something similar. At first, nothing. Then, a hit. Buried in older case archives. Different borough. Different year. Similar detail. A man found dead in his apartment. No cause of death. No trauma. No toxins. Ruled undetermined. Cold case. Malloy pulls the file. Reads it. And feels the same tightening in his chest. Because the details, they're not identical. But they rhyme. Witness reports of strange behavior before death. Claims of seeing something. Feeling watched. And then, collapse. Sudden. Unexplained. Malloy doesn't jump to conclusions. He doesn't label it. Doesn't define it. But he can't ignore it either. Because now, this isn't isolated. It's a pattern. A rare one. A buried one. But real. And if that's true, then Emily Carter wasn't the first. And maybe not the last. Malloy looks back at Hargrove's statement. The distortion. The movement. The presence. Something not solid. Something not fully there. It sounds impossible, but so does everything else in this case. And yet, the evidence keeps circling back to it. Not confirming it, not proving it, but refusing to eliminate it, which in a case like this, might be the same thing. Because now the question isn't just what happened in that room. It's whether that moment, that final second, was triggered by something real. Something external. Something that doesn't leave marks. Doesn't show up in reports. But still exists. And if it does, then solving this case won't just mean finding a killer. It will mean understanding something far more dangerous. Something that doesn't need to touch you. To end you. Malloy stops calling it a coincidence after the 7th case file. There are no coincidences in files like this. Only patterns that were never recognized in time. The more he digs, the clearer it becomes. Emily Carter was not an isolated anomaly. She was part of a thin, almost invisible thread running through years of undetermined deaths scattered across boroughs, cities, even states. Same structure. Same absence of cause. Same impossible final moments reported by witnesses who survived long enough to speak. A man in Queens, 1994, found seated at his kitchen table, eyes fixed on a corner of the room. No trauma, no toxins, no cardiac disease strong enough to explain sudden collapse. Witness neighbor says he was staring at something that wasn't there, then just stopped breathing. A woman in Brooklyn, 1998. Apartment door locked from the inside. Windows slightly open. Witnesses report hearing a single impact sound at approximately 11:17 p.m. No sign of struggle. No intruder. No explanation accepted by science of the time. Another case in Newark, 2003. Similar profile. Similar collapse. Same unresolved medical conclusion. Undetermined sudden death. Malloy prints them all. Lines them up across his desk like fragments of a map no one ever meant to draw. And the shape they form is worse than random. Because random doesn't repeat. He calls in a statistician. Not because he expects answers. Because he needs to confirm what he already fears. The man arrives with a laptop, indifferent at first, bored even. Then Malloy lays out the cases, one by one, stripped of names, dates hidden, only structure left visible. The statistician scrolls. Pauses. Scrolls again. Then stops. This shouldn't exist, he says quietly. Malloy doesn't react. Meaning, the man replies, turning the screen slightly. This clustering of identical undetermined deaths across unrelated populations is statistically near impossible without a shared external variable. Malloy leans forward. External variable like what? The statistician hesitates. Like environment. Toxin. Exposure event. Something physical that hasn't been identified yet. Malloy shakes his head. There's no toxin. No exposure. No trace. The man looks up. Then the data is wrong. It's not, Malloy says. A pause. Then the statistician closes the laptop slowly. Then I don't have an explanation. Malloy watches him leave without another word. Because that answer is still an answer. Just not one anyone wants to accept. Back at the precinct, Hargrove's interrogation resumes. Not with pressure this time. With refinement. Malloy doesn't ask him what he saw anymore. He asks him when it started. Before the bar, Malloy says. Did anything happen to her? Hargrove shakes his head. I didn't know her before that. Did she say anything about prior experiences? Similar events. A pause. Then, yes. Malloy's pen stops. Explain. Hargrove shifts in his seat. She said it started small, he says. Deja vu moments repeating. Then it became stronger. How strong? She said she sometimes knew what people would say before they said it. Malloy studies him. And you believed her? Hargrove hesitates. I didn't know what to believe. Malloy leans in slightly. Did she think she was hallucinating? At first, Hargrove says. Then she stopped thinking that. What did she think instead? Hargrove exhales slowly. That it was real. Silence fills the room again. Malloy feels the shape of it tightening. Because this is the same pattern he saw in her emails. The same escalation. The same loss of distinction between perception and reality. He pushes further. What changed that night? Malloy asks. Hargrove looks down. The window, he says again. Malloy doesn't interrupt. She said she saw it before. Hargrove continues quietly. Not physically. Like she recognized it. Malloy's voice lowers. Recognized what? Hargrove shakes his head. Not the window. What was near it? Malloy feels the familiar tension rise again. Define it. I can't. Try. Hargrove hesitates. Then, she said it felt like something was repeating, like it had already happened before and was happening again in the wrong order. Malloy stops writing, because that phrase, wrong order, doesn't belong in witness testimony. It belongs somewhere else. Somewhere theoretical. Somewhere unstable. He leans back. And then she collapsed, Malloy says. Yes. Instantly. Yes. No warning. No. Malloy studies him for a long moment, then asks the question he hasn't asked directly before. Do you think she died from fear? Hargrove looks up sharply. I don't know. That's not what I asked. A pause. Then, I think she died from what she saw. Malloy holds his gaze. And what was that? Hargrove doesn't answer. Not immediately. When he finally speaks, his voice is lower than before. I don't think it was meant for me. That line lingers long after the interview ends. Because it doesn't explain anything. It complicates everything. Malloy returns to the field. Back to the building. Back to apartment 4C. Now renovated, reoccupied, repainted into something unrecognizable from the original scene. But Malloy doesn't care about the surface. He cares about structure. He studies the layout again. The bedroom. The window. The angle from which Emily would have seen whatever she saw. He stands there for a long time, trying to reconstruct it, not as a crime scene, but as a moment, a sequence of perception. What she saw, what she interpreted, what her body did in response. Then something shifts, not in the room, in his thinking, because every explanation so far assumes the same thing, that Emily reacted to something external. But what if that assumption is wrong? What if the trigger wasn't something arriving, but something aligning? He returns to the lab reports. Cardiac irregularities, stress markers, neurological spikes. Nothing definitive. But when placed alongside the behavioral evidence, the pattern sharpens. Malloy brings in a neurologist this time, a different specialist, someone who deals with perception disorders, extreme anxiety responses, dissociation states. He lays everything out. The cases, the timelines, the descriptions. The doctor listens quietly. When Malloy finishes, there is a long silence. Then the doctor speaks. There's a phenomenon, she says, rare but documented, where extreme perception distortion can trigger acute autonomic collapse. Malloy leans forward. Meaning what? Meaning the brain perceives a threat so overwhelming that the body shuts down. Malloy nods slowly. But there has to be a cause, he says. There always is, she replies. Malloy hesitates. And if the cause isn't physical? The doctor studies him. Then it's psychological, she says. And if it's not that either? A pause. Then we're missing something fundamental. Malloy leaves the consultation with more questions than answers. But something has shifted. Because now the case is no longer about proving Hargrove killed her. It's about understanding whether Emily Carter died from something real, or from something her mind believed was real enough to kill her. And that line is thinner than anything in the file. That night, Malloy replays Hargrove's final statement. I don't think it was meant for me. And suddenly, it no longer sounds like confession. It sounds like distance, like he saw something happening to her that he was not part of, but still present for. Malloy closes the file, but it doesn't feel closed. It feels like it's waiting, because whatever happened in that apartment in 2001 is still not fully explained. And now, after 17 years, the question is no longer who was there. It's what arrived with them. The case stops behaving like a case after Part 7. Malloy notices it first in the small things. The way witnesses phrase their memories. The way reports avoid certainty. The way every attempt to define the moment of Emily Carter's death circles back to the same gap, an absence that refuses to resolve into anything physical. He starts calling it the missing interval. Not officially. Not in reports. Only in his head. Because between 9:37 p.m. and the moment she collapsed, something happens that no system can fully capture. And every explanation, medical, psychological, statistical, keeps brushing against the same invisible wall. So Malloy changes tactics again. This time he stops looking at people. He starts looking at space. Specifically, the apartment itself. He brings in reconstruction specialists, forensic environment analysts, people who can simulate airflow, light behavior, perception angles. They rebuild the bedroom digitally. Every measurement, every angle, every possible line of sight from door to window. When the simulation runs, Malloy watches the reconstructed Emily Carter stand in a digital space that no longer exists. At 9:50 p.m. in the model, Hargrove enters. The simulation follows his statement exactly. She is standing. She turns. She looks toward the window. Then, she collapses. Malloy watches it loop. Again. And again. But something bothers him. The simulation assumes a trigger event at the window. Something visible. Something directional. Something that can be modeled. But nothing appears. No object. No figure. No movement. The specialists adjust variables. Lighting conditions. External reflections. Angles from adjacent buildings. Even hypothetical silhouettes projected through glass. Still nothing. No cause. No anomaly. Just a collapse that refuses to anchor itself to any input. One of the analysts finally speaks. If this were purely physical, he says, we'd see a trigger point. Malloy doesn't take his eyes off the screen. And we don't. No. Silence. Then another technician adds quietly. Unless the trigger isn't in the environment. Malloy turns slightly. What does that mean? The technician hesitates. Then it's in perception. The word lands heavily. Because perception is not something you can reconstruct. Not fully. Not reliably. Malloy ends the simulation. Not because it's wrong, but because it's incomplete in a way that feels intentional. Later that night, here he opens the original photographs. He studies Emily Carter's face again. The eyes. That fixed expression everyone commented on. Not fear exactly. Not confusion. Something sharper. Like recognition without context. Like seeing something familiar in the wrong place. He zooms in. Enhances resolution. Nothing changes. But his interpretation does. Because now he's no longer asking what she saw. He's asking what she believed she saw. And that difference is everything. The next morning, Hargrove requests to speak again. Unprompted. Malloy doesn't like that. Because suspects don't usually initiate contact unless something is shifting. When they meet, Hargrove looks different. Not physically, but in presence. More focused. Less fragmented. I remembered something, he says immediately. Malloy sits down slowly. What? Hargrove exhales. She wasn't just reacting that night. Malloy doesn't respond. He waits. She was anticipating it. Hargrove continues. Explain. She told me earlier in the evening before anything happened that she felt like something was going to happen again. Malloy narrows his focus. Again? Yes. Again what? Hargrove hesitates. Another repetition. Malloy feels the familiar tightening return. She used that word? Yes. Malloy leans forward slightly. And did she explain what she meant? Hargrove shakes his head. She said she couldn't tell if it was memory or prediction anymore. Silence. Heavy. Then Malloy speaks carefully. You're describing someone losing temporal grounding. Hargrove doesn't respond. Malloy continues. Distinguishing past, present, and expectation. Still no reaction. That's psychological, Malloy says. Or neurological. Hargrove finally looks up. Or real, he says quietly. Malloy holds his gaze. Because that's the divide now. Everything in this case splits along that line. Reality versus perception. Cause versus experience. Fact versus interpretation. And nothing sits cleanly on either side anymore. Malloy shifts tone. What happened in the bar when you first met her, he asks. Did anything unusual happen there? Hargrove thinks for a moment. Then, she stopped mid-conversation once, he says. Why? She said she'd already heard what I was going to say next. Malloy's pen stops. And had she? Hargrove hesitates. I don't know. That's not an answer. It's the truth. Malloy watches him closely. Because Hargrove is not lying in the way liars usually do. There's no evasion. No embellishment. Just consistency. And that consistency is becoming more dangerous than contradiction. Malloy shifts again. Did you ever feel anything strange around her? A pause. Then Hargrove answers quietly. Yes. Describe it. Hargrove looks down. Like conversations didn't unfold normally, he says. Like I was reacting to things before they fully happened. Malloy studies him. Or she was predicting your responses. Hargrove shakes his head slightly. It didn't feel like prediction. Then what did it feel like? A long silence. Then, like alignment, Hargrove says. Malloy repeats it internally. Alignment. Not causation. Not reaction. Alignment. He writes it down anyway. Because even if it means nothing, it means something is consistent across accounts. Malloy leaves the precinct again that afternoon. He returns to the apartment building. Now almost indifferent to the passage of time. Different tenants. Different lives. Same space. But this time, he doesn't go inside. He stands across the street, watching. Because something about the location itself is starting to matter more than the people involved. He studies the windows, the angles, the light. And for a moment, just a moment, he imagines it. Not as it was described, not as it was recorded, but as Emily might have experienced it. A room that feels normal, until it doesn't. A space where perception shifts slightly, just enough to create doubt. Then certainty, then fear, then collapse. Malloy shakes the thought off. Because imagination is dangerous in cases like this. It fills gaps too easily. But the problem is, the gaps are all that remain. Back at his desk, he reviews the second wave of cases again. The pattern is undeniable now. People describing similar pre-collapse experiences. Not identical, but structurally aligned. Perception distortion. Sense of repetition. Feeling observed. Uncertainty about sequence of events. Then sudden physiological failure. Malloy circles one line in one report. A witness statement from another case. She looked like she recognized something that wasn't physically there. He stares at it longer than he should, because that sentence is the closest thing to a constant in all of this. Recognition of something absent. Not fear of an object. Not reaction to an intruder. But response to something intangible. Something only the subject perceives. Malloy closes the file again. Slowly. Carefully. Because now the case is no longer about proving what happened. It's about defining what can be trusted. And every answer so far has eroded that trust. And somewhere in the middle of that erosion, Emily Carter stood in a room, looked at a window, and saw something that ended her life without ever needing to touch her. And 17 years later, no one is any closer to agreeing on what that something was. Malloy stops calling it a case in his head after Part 8. Now it feels like something else entirely. A structure built backwards from an ending that no longer behaves like an ending. Emily Carter is still dead. Daniel Hargrove is still the last known presence in the room. The window is still open in every reconstruction. The DNA still confirms he was there. And yet, none of it resolves into a conclusion that feels complete. It only circles tighter. Back at the precinct, the file is officially marked for advanced review, a polite bureaucratic term for cases that no longer fit standard investigative logic. Malloy doesn't correct it. He just keeps working, because something in him refuses to let it settle. Not yet. He re-examines everything again, but now with a different question guiding him. Not what happened, but what remained consistent when everything else changed. And the answer, slowly, begins to separate itself from the noise. Perception reports. Always perception. Emily Carter's emails. Her searches. Hargrove's statements. Witness accounts. Every thread points to the same unstable axis, experience that does not match environment. Malloy calls in one final consultation. Not a neurologist this time. Not a statistician. A cognitive psychologist who specializes in false pattern recognition under stress. The kind of expert who deals with brains under extreme uncertainty. The woman reviews the compiled material in silence for nearly an hour. No interruptions. No reactions. Just reading. When she finally speaks, her voice is measured. "You're treating these accounts as if they describe the same external event," she says. Malloy nods slightly. "They don't." She shakes her head. "They describe the same internal process." Malloy leans forward. "Which is?" She hesitates, then chooses her words carefully. "The brain constructing coherence under escalating uncertainty." Silence follows. Malloy doesn't respond immediately, because that answer is both simpler and more dangerous than anything he expected. He finally speaks. "You're saying she imagined it." The psychologist doesn't accept the framing. "I'm saying her perception began generating predictive structure faster than reality could confirm or deny it." Malloy holds her gaze. "And that can kill someone?" A pause. Then, "In extreme cases," she says quietly, "yes. The autonomic nervous system can fail under sustained high-conflict perception." Malloy sits back slightly. "And what about the reports of seeing something in a room?" She exhales. "That is the brain externalizing internal prediction errors." Malloy repeats it in his head. Externalizing internal prediction errors. It sounds clinical, controlled, safe. But it doesn't feel like closure. It feels like translation. He thanks her. She leaves. And the room becomes quiet again. But Malloy doesn't feel resolution. He feels displacement. Because even if she is right, it doesn't explain why multiple cases share the same structure. Why different people across different years describe similar distortions. He goes back to the files again. This time, stripping away interpretation. Only raw statements. Only language used by witnesses before death. And something emerges that he hadn't noticed before. Not the content. The rhythm. The phrasing. The repetition of uncertainty itself. "They said I was there, but I wasn't sure. I felt like it had already happened. I knew what was going to happen next." Something was repeating. They were there, but not fully there. Malloy reads them aloud in his office. Quietly. Because hearing them makes it worse. It stops being abstract. It becomes pattern. He realizes something uncomfortable. All these statements are attempts to describe instability in sequence perception. Not hallucination. Not delusion. But breakdown in temporal certainty. Malloy closes the folder slowly. Because now the case is no longer about identifying a killer. It's about identifying what breaks first in the human mind when reality stops confirming itself. And Emily Carter may have been the most extreme expression of that breakdown. He returns once more to Hargrove's final testimony. The distortion. The alignment. The collapse. And one phrase keeps resurfacing. "She said it felt like it had already happened before." Malloy writes it down again. Then crosses it out. Then writes it again. Because it doesn't resolve. It only repeats. And repetition in this case is no longer just a theme. It is the mechanism. He drives to the building one final time. not as investigator, but as observer. He stands in the street long after sunset, looking up at the window, now dark, occupied by strangers who know nothing of what happened there. But Malloy does something unusual. He tries to imagine it from her perspective again. Not the crime scene, not the report. Her experience, a normal evening, a conversation, a subtle shift in perception, a growing sense that something is repeating, that events are not unfolding linearly anymore, that prediction and memory are collapsing into the same sensation. Malloy feels it then, a discomfort he cannot fully articulate, because if you remove external cause entirely, what remains is the mind alone attempting to stabilize reality under stress. And in that state, even a neutral stimulus can become overwhelming. A window, a shadow, a reflection, a misalignment. He exhales slowly, because the theory is elegant and terrifyingly incomplete. Back at the precinct, he files his final internal report draft. Not a conclusion, a classification attempt. He writes carefully. Subject exhibited signs consistent with acute perceptual temporal disintegration under extreme cognitive stress. Final collapse likely triggered by internalized prediction conflict rather than identifiable external stimulus. He stops there, because anything further would require certainty he does not have. He closes the file, not because it is solved, but because it cannot be solved further within current constraints. And yet, as he sits there in the quiet office, one thought refuses to leave him. Even if everything was internal, even if nothing external existed in the way Hargrove described, even if Emily Carter's final moment was entirely constructed by her mind under stress, it still killed her. And Daniel Hargrove still stood in that room and saw it happen. So the question that remains is no longer what caused her death. It is what she experienced so completely that her body could not continue. Malloy turns off the light. The office goes dark. And for the first time since the case reopened, he stops looking for the thing in the room and starts wondering about the moment a mind becomes convinced that something impossible is real enough to end everything else.